Hello, guys. Hello, everyone watching on the live stream. Thank you for coming through and supporting us and celebrating the culmination of a lot of hard work this year. And tonight's going to be awesome. We got a couple students that are going to say some things about their work and promote themselves. And I hope that you check out the exhibition. But first of all, we have Jennifer here, who is the head of computing, who's going to say a few words to start us off.
Hello, thank you. Just wanted to drop in to welcome all of you to the Degree Show. It's been a very challenging year, and you've all done amazingly well to get this far and have your work ready and prepare for this online degree show. So, just wanted to congratulate all of you and enjoy the show. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Audrey Sanson, for those watching from somewhere else. I'm the co-head of the Digital Arts Computing program from the Art Department, and my colleague and co-head, Jessica, oops, sorry, things are falling next to me. My colleague, Jessica Wilpert, will be saying some words at the closing of this event. But I just wanted to take a moment to introduce what is a really crucial aspect of this program, which is not only the creative engagement, but also the critical engagement with technology. So in this program, students don't only make their own tools, often with code, but they also critically reflect about technology and how it enacts itself in the world, or its capacity as a world building entity, if you will. And so in this environment of sort of accelerated technology around us right now, if we, whether it's the track and trace app or the Zoomification, I think that their work is not only all the more relevant, but all the more urgent. So with this said, I would like to proudly hand it over to Rachel, who's going to say a few words about how this evening will go in the format. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. So I'm Rachel Falconer for people that are joining outside the university, and I'm a curator and also a lecturer on the DAC program. And I'd really like to echo what you say, Audrey, about the critical awareness and sensitivity around the creative application of technology the DAC program is built on and champions. And I think we're going to see this tonight in action with the wonderful work that the students have produced and within the student-led discussion that we're going to be enjoying shortly. So for the opening, we decided to take inspiration from the video artist, communication theorist, and one of the founding members of the Raindance Corporation, Paul Ryan. He developed a method of feedback and communication called threeing, which he described as a kind of yoga of relationships, or a relational circuit, where people take turns playing three different roles. The three roles are the initiator, the respondent, and the mediator, and the students are going to be practicing this yoga of relationships tonight. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to our amazing students who have put so much collective effort and enterprise in curating and constructing and realizing this exhibition. And alongside this, I mean, the heartbeat of this is the work. They've produced amazing work that really sort of speaks to the theme that they've developed over these last few months. I mean, it's been a real privilege to see development and kind of follow their work over the years. So over to you, Yasmin.
Thank you, Audrey and Rachel, for the kind words and starting this showcase off. I'm Yasmin Morgan, and I'm a third-year student in DAC. And I'm going to start off this showcase by starting with Browsing Copy, which is the wonderful name of Ashley's final piece, which is a mixture of a digital and kinetic installation. Ashley used this machine learning technology called Pix-to-Pix to generate spatial textures that rebuild the built environment that you can see with some of these GIFs. And what is really interesting about her work that you see on the left is that she also created a kinetic installation that has these blinds that open up to reveal almost the real space and see kind of what's behind that. So off to you, Ashley. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, sorry. Hi, I'm Ashley, a third year, the artist for Browsing Copy. So, Browsing Copy is really about presenting an archive or speculative machine generated art space for people to browse. When we talk about space and textures being generated in work, this actually refers to content being totally produced by a machine. So all the content in Browsing Copy was actually generated using Pix, a machine learning model designed for image-to-image translation. So Pix is actually a conditional generative adversarial network. So I'll just call it conditional GAN. And how it works is by a generator producing an image as close as possible to the original image provided, and a discriminator deciding whether the image is a produced or original image. This way, the model learns to approximate closer and closer to the original. So in the case of Browsing Copy, I fed the model a data set of images I collected of art and gallery spaces from 2017 to 2020. I then blanked out white squares in certain areas of the image, as you can see in some of the GIFs. And the model is supposed to learn how to fill in those blanked out squares from the context of the rest of the image. Through this training process, I discovered that at different periods of training, I could actually obtain different textures as the images are all reconstructed layer by layer from less detail to more detail. I found this process to be a little reconstruction or rebuilding of space. Even if the rebuilding might not have been a physical one, it's at least a performative one. Georgie, you're
And
muted.
Georgie?
I'm
Yeah.
now on mute. So yeah, no, that's it. I think Browsing Copy is incredible. It's a really beautifully put together piece, and I would definitely recommend that everyone checks it out on the links provided in the chat. Actually, I just wanted to ask you if you could go through maybe your decision to display the piece or capture the piece in a physical setting, using the prints and the use of the prints. Yeah, I mean, for me, this piece really regenerates itself as an artwork in a variety of different ways, both digitally and physically. I was quite interested in the decision to display it in a physical setting, but document it online.
Yeah, so I really wanted to carry over that performative aspect I mentioned earlier, true to the frames containing the kinetic blinds, where when the slats are open, you can see through to space in reality. But when the slats are closed, it forms a complete image of a total other space. So I can see a connection between digital and physical aspects through the concept of a blank rectangle. So within the digital images, there are blanked out white areas for the machine to fill. And within the kinetic installation, the frames highlight moments of emptiness for when the machines so that when the machines move, it fills up that space. I think this works because of the expanded idea of the moving image. In her book Death 24 Times a Second, Stillness and the Moving Image, Laura Mulvey notes that um, moments of narrative halt are fetishized moments for endless obsessive repetition, which opens up new areas of speculation. So browsing copy is not really progress by a narrative, but is instead driven as the completion of an image is performed. Because of this, it makes sense that the work is not a static sealed copy in perfect condition. That's why it's a browsing copy that's supposed to be flipped through and to convince me to buy into it.
Thank you, Ashley. I think that your work is interesting in so many dimensions, and particularly how the textures reconstruct the environment into a certain ambiguous liminal space. And I'm really excited to hopefully, maybe one day see browsing copy as an installation in real life. But thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Georgie, for responding with some questions. I think I'm giving it off to Thomas now.
Yeah, thank you, Yasmin. Thank you, Ashley, for sharing with us such wonderful work. And I just want to start by saying good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight. And Next, we're going to be talking about Gabor Basti's piece titled Flow of Glitches. And this is a digital performance piece that explores the interaction between human and machine. So Gabor, if you're around, could you please give us an insight into your piece and what went on to building such beautiful performance?
Hello, Thomas. Thank you for introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm Gabor Pasti, the multimedia artist who created Flow of Glitches. My practice is primarily concerned with perception and how we understand and interpret the world around us. I choose to explore part of this theme in this artwork because I'm deeply interested in our relationship with machine as a means of expanding our insight. In this artwork, I'm exploring the boundaries between where the artist and the machine meet. These lines are not hard and fast, but both relative and fluid. Through this art, I'm examining these ideas.
Thank you, Gabor. The first impression that I had when I saw Flow of Glitches for the first time is definitely that aesthetic of digital artifacts popping up the screen, and it almost feels as if there are sensors that are probing the body, and it feels like I'm really seeing as if I am computer vision. And I just wanted to ask you, Gabor, what kind of technology is interplaying here, and how are you meshing it all together in this piece?
Thank you, Yasmin. In this, it is actually partially computer vision for sure. So you're right. I use machine learning and computer vision for tracking and pose estimation with which I map movement to a sound. I use this to create an interacting relationship between machine and the dancer, and between myself and the machine. This affected each other's way of operating. The dancer moves affected the music generated by the machine, and in return, the dancer reacted using her creativity to respond to the music. The idea of seeing both the machine and the human aspect of this collaboration exposes this interconnectedness. The black and white aspect of the video represents the dancer emotion and creativity. The red-green lines and the squares represent the information the machine reads and interprets. This overlap at times, this both overlaps at times, but not identical. This discrepancy and repetition creating the glitches. My role as an artist was to emphasize the best of both with my vision for this artwork.
Amazing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Gabor. And I just wanted to say that I was just rewatching your piece just before we started this conversation. And I think it's a really good example of a machine-human harmonic relationship. And I think it's a very interesting piece because it raises sort of like these questions like whether a machine is like a separate entity or if it's an extension of our humanity. So I think you nailed it there with that piece, and I really like the soundtrack, I must say, and I recommend people to wear headphones with it. I think you will really like it.
Thank you so much, Thomas.
Of course. Sorry, I think Georgie, I think you're next.
Thank you. So I'm actually introducing Thomas's piece, which is Time is Inherently Cruel. So Thomas is in third year, and Time is inherently cruel is made up of 5 ambient GAN paintings. So GAN refers to general adversarial networks, which are developed from artificial intelligence or machine learning. So that's a sort of brief understanding of what it is, and it's become really popular in the art world particularly. So you can visit Thomas's works through the link sent in the chat, but for now here's a short clip of the work which you can see in just above. Should be playing. There you go, it's playing now. So I'm now going to hand over to Ashley, who has a few comments and questions for Thomas. Thomas, who's now going to tell us a bit more about his work.
Thank you. So, like you just mentioned, like Georgie mentioned, my piece is a video art piece comprised of 5 GAN paintings, and it's a machine learning artwork that attempts to contain time um, by registering a stream of data from the organic world and giving it a life of its own in the digital one. And it's like effectively creating a novel artificial space of moments that are no longer there. That's how I like to think about it. It's like a machine's unique vision. And the way I was able to achieve this result was using artificial intelligence, specifically a framework called GAN, or more specifically Style GAN 2 ADA. What this framework allows me or anyone else who uses it to do is to you give it an input, in this case, a data set to train with. From these images, it generates novel images that are based on the original ones. So you have these neural network, which are algorithms generating these seeds, these images, and then the ones that are more loyal to the training set, they pass on, and then this iteration continues for as long as you want it to. In this case, it was like a week. So at the end of it, you end up with like all these images that are based on something real. In this case, photos of the sky, but are not really copies of it, are just inspired by them. So in effect, they're like new skies. And talking about data set, the way I crafted my data set, I didn't like buy a data set. I didn't download a data set. I made it myself through a performance that lasted 6 months. And what I did in this time is that I took a photo of the sky every hour, every day for 183 consecutive days. And this was my way to not only make the work more personal to me, but also to avoid sort of like the gray areas, the gray moral areas that come with using data sets from third parties when working with artificial intelligence. And yeah, so I think Ashley, I think you had a question.
Yeah, something really interesting is that while my piece is an archive of machine-generated space with the galleries, yours is an archive of machine-generated time with the skies. I think that is really successful as again just to interpolate each individual image of the sky that you photographed for like the past 6 months and turn it into something which transitions so well that it could almost be a real sky. Also, as there are no other markers of our current reality which could break this illusion, we are trapped to believe that this might be our real sky too. So I really love how this parallel reality that you have created disrupts your chronological time and brings it to a halt while you live out on your own modified time that affords you to meditate in a space that's not simply just a void. In your work, you have all this red text as well. I guess these are your meditations.
Mm-hmm.
In the rest of the series of your videos, you also seem to be constantly asking, what if? Could you share more about what these personal meditations are and what they mean to you?
Yeah, certainly. So first, addressing the quality or the reality of the skies, I think that was one of my main goals. I wanted the work to feel like it could fool you, as in if you don't know, you could think that it's a real sky. I wanted to avoid certain like common artifacts that are very like like very common among GAN art. So I'm glad that you actually think that it looks like a real sky, because that makes me happy. And then talking about the text that you mentioned, yeah, that's like the other big element of my piece. And it's sort of this, as I was dealing with the main concept of my work, which is the cruelty of time, I started having these thoughts that I hadn't had in a while, but it's sort of like these meditations that I think not only I have, but other people in my position, and by that I mean immigrants of people who have been displaced from their motherlands have, which are these thoughts of like your like your previous lives, your previous surroundings, your previous environments, all the little things that were but weren't, all the little things that you could have done different and that could have affected the way you ended up being and where you are right now. So I think they go this sort of narrative that I have throughout my 5 videos, my 5 paintings, goes hand in hand with the artificial space that I was able to create, because it's a space of alternatives, it's a space of different realities. So that's what I wanted to try to convey with narration. Yeah, thank you. George, I don't know if you had anything else.
I think the piece is really beautiful. So thank you both for the comments and for Thomas for explaining such a beautiful piece. I just really would recommend that everyone checks out Thomas's piece in full, especially with putting on headphones. It's a really mesmerizing piece. Just the, like everyone's just said, like watching the like sky and like interpolate sort of through different versions of itself. Yeah, I'd really recommend that everyone goes and checks it out, and the links can be found in the chat. So I'm next going to hand over to Gabor.
I'm happy now to introduce third-year student Georgie Hodges' work, Bermondsey Spa. This work aims to begin to deconstruct negative connotations and also seeks to destigmatize council housing through exploring Georgie's connection with this area. She does this in particular looking through her window over the last year from where she has been shielding. Bermondsey Spa depicts the panoramic view, showing private developments in contrast with the council housing. Through poetry and illustration, this piece both explores her conflict with developers, romanticizing this development. Georgie, can you please explain more?
Thank you, Gabor. So I've lived in Bermondsey my whole life. I've moved from one end of Bermondsey to the other. I moved to my current flat in 2009, which is social housing. So I want to sort of clarify that my piece is a work in progress. I've been working on trying to get the code right, but I think the piece works really well as a sculpture as well. So it is an ongoing piece, but I think that's pretty significant to the concept, as gentrification is an ongoing process, and that one that can last decades, which is what I've experienced growing up in Bermondsey. So the area I've based this piece in is Bermondsey Spa. It's been unfortunately been in the process of gentrification since 2003, and the most recent step in that process being building 2 student halls. And these were both student halls that are heavily opposed by local residents. So gentrification of Southwark's been really, really huge as well. And that sort of the gentrification has really contributed greatly to the housing crisis in Southwark as well. The most significant example probably being the demonization and stigmatization of the Haygate and the Elephant Castle shopping centre, which, if you do follow my Twitter, I've been very angry about recently, following the recent demolition of it, and watching that sort of unfold. Through my piece, my hope is to begin to dismantle the stigma around council housing through sort of reflecting on my sort of, I guess, my own experience of growing up in this area and like my experience over the last year. So I've never written a poem before, but I've written one today. And that sort of takes like you through like my experience in the last year, sort of touching on like more not romanticized moments, but also looking at a bit of the reality, and reflecting on how gentrification and privatization impact people on a day-to-day basis. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for sharing such personal work, Georgie. I guess I could tell that it's a very sensitive and personal subject. So I guess I would like to ask you about what you've learned about it while working on it. And also you mentioned that it's a work in progress piece. So I'm kind of curious to know as to, in an ideal world scenario, how would you display this to an audience? And once it's completed, I'm kind of curious about that.
Thank you. So in terms of creating the piece, in a more like technical sense, I've learned how to use physical computing. I've never done that before, and that's been like a bit of a ride. And this is like the first time. Just before this session, I worked out what I wanted to do. So it really is. That's what computing's like, I guess. You work things out at the wrong time sometimes. But the idea was to sort of install some cranes, and I think cranes are really significant in London skylines. They're everywhere, and they turn up overnight, and they just sort of appear. And I've think in the last year, about 5 more cranes have popped up in addition to the previous 5 cranes that were already existing on a development just 5 minutes down the road, which is majority like thousands of, not thousands, about 1,000 private homes compared to 40 social housing homes. So you know, no one's going to be able to afford those private developments, but I won't go into that because that's like my dissertation. But yeah, so the cranes are quite significant in gentrification and privatization of housing. And the idea was to have the cranes sort of and trigger certain parts of the poem to come up as they move in certain directions. And I think the ticking sort of aspect of it, and it being quite sudden, sort of adds that like that sort of motion you get in cranes when you maybe when you watch them move, they're smooth, but when you just look out the window every now and then, they change so dramatically. And that's the sort of aspect I want to add to the piece. And hopefully I'll get that done soon and presented on my social medias.
Great, thank you. I think, Gabor, do you have anything else?
Well, thank you, Georgie, for sharing your awesome work and sharing your story. It's lovely to see that your life is connected to your work as well. And more on this relevant topic, please follow the link provided so you can check out Georgie's full work soon. Now it's time to move on to Ashley, who will introduce our next artist.
I'll now be introducing a work by third-year student Yasmin Morgan titled Amorphous Butterfly. Amorphous Butterfly is a speculation on machine-mediated relationships and the potential for intimacy with artificial intelligence. So two bright abstract entities give visual form to a language model. They morph and animate as they generate text, as though future deities conversing with each other. Now, we've seen before with Thomas's work, which was created using machine learning from a data set of images of the sky taken over 6 months. As your project also deals with machine learning, Yasmin, can you tell us more about how you went about teaching these two entities how to speak?
Thank you, Ashley. So the reason why I started getting interested in generating text and thinking about language is because this work was kind of based off of my dissertation, where I spent a lot of time researching relationships or potential relationships with chatbots, the ability to have a connection with something that only through words. And I found that really fascinating and intriguing. So the way that I worked with generating this text is I used a character level recurrent neural network, which is like a similar machine learning model as Thomas used, but he used images, whereas I use a data set of text. And so I think it was interesting how language can represent and capture and distort time on history. And so one of the models on the left, I trained on a corpus or a data set of koans, which are these Zen Buddhist sayings that are meant to be meditated on rather than rationally thought about. So I kind of wanted to play around with, you know, what could happen if a machine tries to generate these koans, these very riddle-like kinds of texts. And it's not as if they are particularly successful in terms of like being accurate, but it's more about yeah, just playing around with this data set that I've accumulated. Yeah. Gabor, I'm not sure if you have something to say.
I have a question for you, Yasmin.
Yes.
It is very interesting to see two entities in one machine trying to speculate intimacy. Watching your work, I couldn't help but to try to make sense of their dialogue from the outside. Did you think about the connection between human and machine and the human quality of generating meaning and reading between the lines? Might machines have this quality too? And the last, why did you choose the seed text as you did? Is that determining the success of that intimacy?
Thank you, Gabor. I think it's interesting that you use the word success. So perhaps for me, the success lies in exposing the potential that we can have to to understand um, this speculative machine relationship. So I think it's it's exposing ourselves that we're not just suspending our disbelief that that we can have relationships with living entities, but we in fact see ourselves even within something that is unlike ourselves. And I think I was also drawn to combining both these, sleek and specular kind of alien-like entities with language, just to kind of see what, to see whether the audience or the interactors can, can feel some sort of, can feel some sort of emotion or witness some sort of relationship going on between these two abstract entities. So, yeah.
Thank you, Yasmin, for this lovely piece where we are allowed to take a peek into an intimate relationship between AIs. Her work can be viewed in full through the links in the chat, and you may also explore the work further by modifying the seed text and perhaps ask yourself whether you can be touched by this encounter. Now, I will pass you off to Elizabeth to introduce the next work.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, there we go. Right, and so next we are on to Nate Townsend's Aut Cloud, Space, the Final Frontier. This is a digitally 3D modeled film piece that looks at a lesser known part of our solar system, the Oort cloud, which is the furthest reaches of the sun's pole. There is a cloud of unknowns, and therefore Nate is exploring them through digital rendering. If you would like to continue, Nate.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nate. I'm a filmmaker and a digital artist, as you can see on the screen. I actually made that little glass ball in the top left there. And these are some screenshots from my film, Aut Cloud. Actually, David, if you refresh the presentation, there should be a video as well. But this film kind of came about from me wanting to make a film because I haven't made one in quite a really long time, but not really being able to because of being in lockdown, having to stay at home, and also not really having any budget for it. So, as I've done before, I chose to make a film about something that I could render in my bedroom, but that also was very extrospective and showed us more about the world. And also just because I like to make images like this. So this film is about the Oort cloud, which is something I've been interested in for a long time because it's kind of a rarely known part of our solar system that not many people have heard about, but that actually has some really interesting implications for science in our lives because it's kind of a sample of the chemistry and physics that made the Earth and therefore made us. So I just sort of wanted to show people what it is and tell people more about it, which is what this film is about.
Thank you, Nate. I think that your film, just from looking at it before, is absolutely mind-blowing. Being able to look at these renderings in this film of outer space, but through this looking outwards, it feels that I'm looking inwards and I'm feeling really moved by your narration as well. Particularly, and this is why I recommend everyone to watch this, is because there is an awesome shot of the perspective of an asteroid hurtling through space. And I just love what you said about these unseen implications for life. But I kind of wanted to probe you further. Do you think a lot about the physics, when you were making this, and is it important to you that it's accurate? And if so, like how come?
I spent a lot of time with this, probably too much time trying to make it as physically accurate as possible. I spent about 3 days reading off orbital inclination and eccentricity facts off Wikipedia so I could make a model of the solar system to scale. But that's actually proved really useful for just showing where things are in relation to each other. And yeah, part of why I enjoy doing CGI stuff is because it's kind of a meticulous modeling process. Oh, that's that shot there that I was talking about. It's kind of a meticulous modeling process of trying to replicate the real world inside a computer, which was originally what interested me in computer graphics because I just think that's cool. But it's I find it very relaxing to have that reason to look at things in very deep, subtle detail and try to understand them for what they are. And I think if I can properly replicate something in the computer, then I really understand what it is in its own essence. And I think that's a really nice thing to do. And then that comes back to the whole theme that you touched on, which is something that I'm really glad you got from the film, because I was trying to get it across, is that for me, astronomy and science is quite an introspective thing, although it might not seem like it, because ultimately we are part of the universe and we're made of it. And learning more about it and looking outside of ourselves and outside of our planet can teach us far more about who we really are ourselves, I think. And that's a really nice thing to do.
Right, we are now going to hand over to me, and yeah,
I can introduce you your work, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth is another fellow third year, and her final piece is called Dysmorphic Anatomy. And this piece is a combination of code and illustration, which explores the physical reaction to hating oneself and uses both visuals and audio to show organs reacting to mental illness. And I, from my first look at this work, the anatomical illustrations, they lay the organs so bare that it almost feels like a violent gaze, that you're looking at everything that's bare and there's nothing that can be hidden. So Elizabeth, what else do you have to say about your work?
My piece comes from not only my own experience, but I have lost count of the amount of people I know who suffer from body dysmorphia. It is a piece that was inspired a lot by pre-photography anatomical textbooks, and just shows the kind of internal physicality of suffering from mental illness. The code I implemented to not only animate my illustrations, but also to warp them. I implemented shaders along with pathfinding, just to create this kind of feeling of not only, as Yasmin said, as kind of violent, visceral reality of mental illness, but a visually just a visually similar experience to reading a old anatomy textbook.
Awesome. I'm just gonna. I just really love the piece, and for me, I really find work based on experience or a connect when you're really connected to it. I think it's really incredible, and there's always a certain sort of feeling you get from the work. And I think it's a really powerful depiction of body dysmorphia. And I really love the illustrations. I think the personal touch on the piece is incredible, and actually, when you watch the piece and you can hear you speaking in the background on your like own experience, and I think that's really powerful, and the illustrations definitely like support it and help tell a story that, you know, like you said, is reflected on by and experienced by many people. I think it's really powerful. And perhaps I also wanted to hear a little bit more maybe on the frames where we see a trail running down from the brain right down to the reproductive system. Maybe a bit more about that.
Yeah, I one of the things I've always personally noticed about having a mental illness is people kind of just say, oh, it's all in your head, and kind of the assumption that your brain is the only thing that's affected, which isn't true. My dysmorphia gives me anxiety, which makes my heart race, which gives me stomach problems, which makes my periods go all over the shop. Sometimes I go like 4 months without having one, and I wanted to incorporate all these organs to show this experience of it as an illness that absolutely takes your entire body. Also, by using illustration similar to Georgie, we both take the viewer into our own personal view. We show you what it's like to be us, whether that's literally a first person view of Georgie's own window, or me bringing you into my head, into my body, and showing you the corruption of the body and how that feels.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I would say exactly the same with both of your work, and wonderfully put, Elizabeth. Your unique illustration style and that medium, allows us to catch a glimpse of your reality. And I think that it's an amazing piece of work. So definitely check it out on the website and check out everyone's. We are actually wrapped up with all of the artists that are showcasing today. Thank you everyone for talking about their artworks. It was really amazing. We have 15 minutes left for our allocated streaming time. So what we've done is that we've collected a few questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out what the questions, and I'll try my hardest to get through all of them. So we'll try and keep this snappy. So this is for both Gabor and Ashley. Jesse says, I wonder if both of you, Ashley and Gabor, have started to look at the world and reality differently as a result of your work on your projects. What do you guys think?
Ashley, can you go first?
I think the biggest takeaway for me when making my work is thinking about how an image is created and thinking about how a machine creates something so differently than a human does. So when I was training my models, I was like thinking about how the model creates the fills for my images using multiple layers. But then when we as humans create an image, we use light and photography. And even through some of the errors that I've had to navigate through creating this project, like there was an issue with my model not really showing me the results that I wanted it to show. It's just showing me textures and not exactly filling in the squares as to how I wanted it to be filled in. I was thinking, if you can see in the work, some images have 5 blanks, some images have 1 blank. So you would think that if a machine is able to fill in 1 blank, it will be able to fill out 5 blanks, but actually that might not be the case. So it's really interesting that you cannot use normal human logic to go about thinking about how a machine would work. And so in that sense, I don't think it's a case where reality is so far away from whatever that's presented here. Gabor?
For me, yes, it was truly eye-opening for a couple of different reasons. First of all, this is the first time I projected really what the computer sees when it's looking and how much data we don't see, and the computers keep reading just us being in front of it. And this is very interesting because this is almost like the invisible gaze of the machine. but we say it machine, but it's very human-like in a way, because it's not perfect. It has some glitches. It interprets the world. It doesn't read perfect specs and numbers, but sometimes if it's missing some information, it will fill the gaps. And I think that's even how human works. So the relationship between humans and machines is not really that different. And of course, it cannot be because we created the machine or our image. They're just extension and specialized to a specific task. But it was very interesting to explore in a creative field where I give that freedom of glitches and interpretation. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Gabor and Ashley. Um, so it's another question to you guys. I know. How did the artists overcome the challenge of possibly needing to rethink work as a consequence of not being able to physically show it? Ashley and Gabor, as it seems like it was intended to be physical, perhaps. And this question was from Lara Carmona.
Ashley, please.
I think definitely having to move all our projects onto presenting them digitally was a huge move. And Lara, you're right to say that my project was originally meant to be a physical installation. So I do think that there's a sense of wonder that you would feel in experiencing a kinetic work in real life that would be different from experiencing a video documentation of it. So originally, if everything had gone as I intended it to, the project would actually be an an installation where each individual frame in space would stand as um, out as a sculpture, as a kinetic sculpture on its own. However, each of the frames in space represents sort of an exhibition flow, and you are able to go through each of them as though like an obstacle course. Something that I've been pondering on when I was still thinking about how I would have loved to install this was maybe like a dog agility competition where each single obstacle presents itself as a marvel, but you still see it in its totality and its eventual flow. So that would be something I would have liked to explore if I was able to present this work in real life physically. Gabor?
My work actually is meant to be presented live, but not necessarily like a display, but a performance with the artist. And maybe these things what the machine sees projected onto the dancer in real life, real time. However, I must confess that not being able to do that made me explore different avenues. And this is just as interesting for me as the live performance would be. I think I would explore both directions from now on, and maybe this limitation open up a new door in the same time.
Thanks, Ashley and Gabor. So we have a question which is to all the third years. How have these projects that you've worked on this year molded or influenced your trajectories and post-uni creative practice? I don't know about you guys, but I'm barely thinking about post-uni. I'm just trying to get through it. But yeah, so has anyone thought about how these projects have affected what they're thinking about doing in the future? Anyone's up to take it?
I'm happy to. You go first and then I'll go after you.
Yeah.
Yeah. As Yasmin said, just kind of want to survive through, I think it's quite a common meme at the moment, real sick and tired of living through major historical events. But it's a lot of what this year, and especially like having to, as Gabor and Ashley mentioned, like totally like rethink about how you're even going to present your work. It teaches you like the value of constraints, the value of being able to go, oh, all right, I can't do that, and I can't do that, and I can't do that, but what can I do? And it's led me to kind of think about, all right, if this thing's going to go on for a while, the job market is going to be crap for a while. I am going to work on my portfolio. I am going to use illustration and code and get my portfolio to the highest possible degree, and yet use that as a launching point. And this has really taught me that just like constantly making pieces of work is the best thing I can do for my artistic practice.
Sounds amazing, Elizabeth. And Georgie?
So like throughout the degree, I've kind of slowly realized that I'm maybe not a computational artist, also work traditionally, which you can probably see in my piece in the way that the computation doesn't very work as well as it is meant to at the moment. That's all about learning and creating. So although my practice isn't going to be computational posts, or not as computational as some other artists, it's still going to obviously have that element. I think for me, I'm more going to end up going, in terms of career-wise, I'm going to go into teaching for a bit, trying to like, a part of it will be encouraging computational art in like secondary school level, but also a huge part of my like practice and life is about campaigns and campaigning, and a huge part of that is obviously housing at the moment. It directly impacts me, and I've seen like the devastation that gentrification causes. So for me, it's about trying to sort of like tackle that whilst also, you know, doing illustration, do it as a enjoyment thing and like trying to reconnect with that enjoyment. And I think something I felt throughout doing the degree is that I lost my connection with being able to do my physical practice, which is something I really wanted to get into and make sure I got that by the end of my course, which I've done, and through the amazing Hatch Lab, who have been open like on doing things for us like remotely. And I just like wanted to give a mini shout out because like my piece wouldn't be what it is without that support. But in terms of my like in terms of like my practice, it's about, I'm still like working that out, and I think that's gonna always happen. And yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Georgie and Elizabeth. I mean, I'm super excited to see where you guys are heading, and I say the same to everyone else in our year. Yeah, no matter where we end up, you know, just from what we've seen with the project so far, you know, we're really thinking about really interesting stuff. Unfortunately, there are a few questions that I won't be able to get to because it would be nice to wrap up on time. Before I pass it off to the people that are going to outro us, are there any other third years that want to comment on about their experience this year and where they're thinking of going in the future? If there's no one, okay. Well, yeah, I just wanted to say perhaps I can take the stage. Yeah, I think that I'm really hopeful about trying to be an artist, you know, and being able to get work commissioned. And yeah, I want to stay true to my artistic soul. I think that is going to be tricky because yeah, there's a lot of commercial things that I want to do as well, but I think that it can mesh together. And yeah, just really happy about yeah, finishing up and actually choosing to do this degree. I think it ended up being pretty awesome in the end. Yeah, so that's all from us. And I think I will pass it off finally to Jessie and Atao.
Great. Thank you so much, Yasmin. That was really fantastic. Can I just say an amazing round of applause for the artists, because it really was a really incredible, you know, well-timed, slick, fantastic presentation of your work. So interesting, as everybody said in the chat, to see your work. And to remember that, you know, you've had a year and a half of lockdown and you've managed to create these incredible works through such difficult times. and managed to, you know, overcome them. So I think it's really an amazing achievement, you know, at any time, but particularly at the time that we're going through now. And, you know, some of the comments in the chat, I think I couldn't say it better than the people who've managed to, you know, watch your work for the first time and said things like, I'm really moved by how much you as artists reflect so heavily on purpose and meaning. It gives hope for the future. And I, you know, I don't think I could say it better than that. And then somebody else said, you know, you students have really opened my eyes and heart to a new way of looking at life. And I think, you know, as artists, if you can do that for people out in the world who are seeing your work for the first time, that is an amazing achievement. But also, this is just the beginning. You know, these are your first works that you're creating as part of this. And there's so much more to look forward to in terms of what you're going to produce and think about and create. And I love the personal relationship that you have with your work and how deeply you've thought about the things that you're making. You haven't just gone and made stuff, you've really thought very deeply about it. So it's really fantastic. I was rather moved by the whole experience. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Atau, who has guided you through this process over the year. So he's had this really intimate relationship with your project. So Atau.
Great, thanks, Jessie. So that was Jessie Wolpert, who's our course leader for the Digital Arts Computing program, which is a joint program between the Departments of Art and the Departments of Computing at Goldsmiths. So a really, really unique undergraduate program. My name's Atau Tanaka. I'm professor of media computing, and I had the pleasure of being of accompanying the third-year students in their final project module. And so I accompanied them through processes at the beginning of the year, just starting with a blank sheet of paper and coming up with an idea, conceiving, you know, ideation, conception, going through, working out, prototyping, and works in progress and so forth. So I really saw these projects evolve, ideas take shape, some things get abandoned, some new things come in. And so what we went through all together were incredible sort of journeys, processes of, as you could see, a very, very creative and personal engagement with technology. And I think we all agree that the works that we've seen here are beautiful, they're technologically advanced, but they're very thoughtful and critical. And to find that balance is truly, really remarkable, because the kinds of projects that we're seeing, because obviously we go out and look at what's going on in the exhibition world, in the museum space, in the galleries in London. And students would come back with huge ambitions. And I'd have to keep reminding them, well, some of those pieces that you're seeing, when you're seeing an exhibition of Olafur Eliasson, he's got a whole studio, he's got a whole team. You're one person. What can you do as that one person's worth of art, one person's worth of technology? But what you're seeing here are work that for most other creatives out there take entire teams. And each work that you're seeing has been done by one person. And that is amazing to each and all of you. I'd also like to mention for the Final Show website that there are 30 works split across 3 year groups. We had 11 of the third years presenting, and we had Nate, one of the second years, as part of the presentation group today. But there are loads of other works to check out. The website has been all student run with some help from master students who had made an infrastructure for it. But this show, the presentation, is all completely student run. And I'd like to congratulate you all on a successful show and a great weekend run for this degree show. So fantastic. Great work.
Thank you.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to say we've got another event coming up on Saturday. I just need to get the details because they've slipped my mind. Unless anyone has them immediately to hand, I'll just be a quick second getting them up.
Yeah. Basically, this Saturday, I'm chairing a panel discussion with some artists and curators and technologists, and I completely forgot to even mention that earlier. Thank you, Georgie. It would be wonderful if you could pop in. It's on Saturday at 3 p.m. It's going to be a live stream, so you can just pop in and yeah, see what we get up to and chat about. But it should be really fun.
Awesome. I'm just getting the links as well, and so everyone can find them really quickly. And thank you, Yasmin, for organising it. It looks like it's going to be incredible.
Thanks, Georgie. Are we still streaming? Are we done? Okay.
Cool. All right.